Now we are finally becoming a serious country again. See, a lot of people don't understand that when you're not just illegally crossing a border, a lot of people that come to the United States have what we call sponsors. What the sponsor does is they basically co-sign for your behavior while you're in the United States, meaning they're co-signing that you are not going to leech off the government, you're not going to use us for benefits, you're not going to be a burden on the American taxpayer. These sponsors literally vouch for the immigrants that come over here. Now, if they come here and they start to break the law, leech off of our system, well, there has to be consequences. But never in history has this ever been enforced. But because we are now a serious country, it will be. Let's take a listen to Roman Ivanov, shall we?
United States Department of Health and Human Services, a principal agency of the federal government, has officially published crucial information that on December 17th, in the year 2025, important letters began to be systematically sent to sponsors of immigrants, explicitly demanding full reimbursement for various government benefits that were utilized by their sponsored individuals. This was publicly announced by the Deputy Secretary of the Department, Jim O'Neill. If you are indeed a financial sponsor of an immigrant who is currently receiving various social benefits or other forms of essential taxpayer-funded assistance, then you are legally and morally responsible for fully paying for these benefits and services, ensuring their well-being and preventing them from becoming a public charge.
So again, it's kind of like being a co-signer for your idiotic kid who wants an apartment that's $5,000 a month and they have a horrible work ethic. Once you sign on the dotted line, if this kid bails out or they decide not to pay, well, it's going to go on your credit. So for these sponsors, they are now being sent bills in the mail from the federal government, letting them know the person that you sponsored used this much in benefits. You are now not just morally responsible, but you're also financially responsible since you're the one who vouched for them to be here. You said when they came here, they weren't going to get on the government. They weren't going to get on welfare. They weren't going to get on Section 8. They were going to come here. They were going to work. Usually it's a work visa sponsorship or for a job. But think about it. So much fraud and corruption here in the U.S. We're not validating or verifying anything. It was a free-for-all because typically the illegals or people who are, plan on overstaying their visa, they're going to want to vote Democrat because Democrats don't believe in laws. They don't believe in law and order. They'd actually just turn this country over and burn it to the ground if we allowed them to, because essentially to be a Democrat is a nihilist. They don't have children. They don't believe in children. They don't believe in families. They don't believe in marriage. So they don't believe in tomorrow. If you don't have children, if you don't have a wife, then what do you care about 20 years from now? All you care about is today. So you would easily be corruptible from another foreign government or a foreign entity that wants to tear down the United States, someone like a George Soros, which is why he consistently backs Democrats. He wants to let prisoners out of prison that are murderers. That's why there's always these George Soros-backed DAs. They attach themselves to Democrats. Democrats don't believe in enforcing the law. So that's why the illegals and anybody else, they're going to literally vote Democrat. They have to protect their bottom line, which is defrauding the country and being a professional criminal within our borders. But now you're fucked. Yeah. Now, if somebody who you sponsored comes over here and they decide to get on government assistance, Section 8, welfare, or free medical, guess who's going to get the bill and have to foot it? You are. This right here is going to drastically change the landscape on people who are going to be willing to sponsor anyone, because now the bill's on them. And I don't know if you guys have ever danced with the federal government. They're going to get their money. You're not going to be able to run from them forever. You might as well just go back to wherever country these people came from that you're sponsoring. You might as well just go relocate there and good luck.
This week, I sent letters to sponsors demanding repayment of these funds. And friends, we're not talking about random people here. We are specifically talking about those sponsors who have formally signed the legally binding so-called affidavit of financial support for an immigrant who is entering the United States of America, thereby taking on significant responsibilities. By signing it, the sponsor is legally obligated to ensure that the immigrant coming to the US will not become a burden on the American state, that is, on the American budget. And if
Imagine you or someone asks you to be their sponsor from another country, and they're promising you once they get to America, they're never going to want to party. They're never going to want a day off. They're coming here just to focus and to work. And you say, okay, I trust you. I believe you. And then as soon as they get here, they don't want to find a job. They get on welfare. They start begging for other benefits, healthcare, etc. And you just think nothing of it because no one's ever held you accountable. And then one day you get a bill in the mail for $38,000, $45,000, $50,000. And they're going to levy and garnish your wages that you're earning from wherever you work. They're going to garnish it to cover this immigrant who's here to their bills. They're going to garnish your check indefinitely because if the person is still here in the country, every month they're racking up more and more bills. I think people are going to start thinking 2 or 3 times before they ever consider sponsoring anyone. The same way, once you get an eviction on your credit from your kid, when your other kids are asking you to get an apartment in your name for them, you're probably not going to do it anymore. It's the same thing. You got to be careful who you co-sign for. You can't vouch for other people because, well, then you're putting yourself in a situation where you're going to be held accountable for their actions. That's how it goes.
Any social benefits are received, or if the American government incurs any social expenses for this immigrant, the sponsor will be required to take on all those costs and reimburse the American government. These regulations have existed in US law for decades, but in practice, they were almost never enforced.
The good thing is to even become a sponsor, there are financial requirements. You have to have housing. You have to have a job. I think you can't be a felon. So that means you have an impeccable record, that you're literally a member of society. You're productive. You're not in trouble. You're actually a pretty responsible adult. And then you let an immigrant come over here, scam you, and literally put you in debt. Are you going to be okay with that? How would you feel if someone who you did a favor for, who might be a family member or a friend of a family member, or it's a woman that you met when you were on 90 Day Fiance, you brought her over here and she decides she wants to scam the system and at your expense, because you guys might break up and, well, she's living off the state now. And guess who is going to get the bill? Because people think that welfare is free. It's not. Like when women have to go apply for food stamps and welfare, they have to put down the name of a man because they have to go after the man who created the kid with you. You can't just show up and just get free money with no questions. Like someone has to be on the hook. So now this person you sponsored, you're the deadbeat dad that's on the hook now. Your job, your income, your references, your house are all now on the table, and they're all fair game to get reimbursed for the money the person you sponsored have siphoned from us American taxpayers. And I think that's beautiful. We have not been serious. Imagine that we enforce some laws, but not all laws. So how is everybody equal under the law if only certain laws are being enforced against certain people? I don't see black and white Americans, anybody protesting when they're arrested or when they're being held accountable for breaking the law. People just let them go to jail. But apparently, if you're brown and you're an illegal, you're above the law. You know, you're better than us Americans. And I wholeheartedly resent that to the depths of hell. You are not better than me. You're actually worse than me. You are a guest. You are a temporary visitor. You have nothing invested in this land. You have nothing invested in the future of this country. You're only here to serve your own personal interests, which actually go against my interests, and my interests come first, because this is not just an America first movement, but it's an America only movement.
Now, with the arrival of President Trump, the situation is changing dramatically. The letters refer to various social payments, comprehensive subsidies, essential medical assistance paid directly from the government budget, and extensive programs specifically designed for helping those in need. All of these funds that were spent from the programs I just listed on the immigrant, if that immigrant has a sponsor, the sponsor will be required to repay and reimburse them to the American budget.
And you know what? That's my problem with, our government being so liberal. What does that mean? Everyone who's in need. Fuck it, everyone's in need. Everybody can claim to be in need of something. Are you going to just give away everything to everybody equally, or are you going to expect some of us to take care of others? It doesn't add up. These people don't respect our country. They don't respect our system. They don't like capitalism. They want to live in a communist utopia. But the problem is we're funding their communist utopia. What do you think the hood is? What do you think the projects are? What do you think the ghetto is? That's a communist utopia. Why? Everyone in those areas is receiving social benefits from the government. And just like in Cuba, except you're not getting government cheese, you're getting state-sponsored money where you can go out and buy whatever. Now they're changing that, which is good. Subsidized housing in those same areas, and limited enforcement now of laws. So that is a communist utopia. The government is actually paying for your housing and for your food. You're a slave. You're indebted to the government. You're not free. And we are enabling it with our income generated through capitalism for you to live in your imaginary communist utopia. That has to be done away with. And thank God the Supreme Court is going to hear our arguments for birthright citizenship removal. Past a certain amount of convictions for a certain type of violent crime, any American should be eligible to be repatriated to another country where you're banned from living within our borders. Because prison it's not a punishment in America. It's you get fed forever, you get free housing, and in this economy, and with the housing issue and the food insecurity, that sounds like a pretty good deal, especially if you're not really a man who's into women anyway. So the only thing you're missing in prison is women. Other than that, prison's like a fucking playground. So expatriating people outside of the country is probably going to be one of the only measures we can take to change the behavior of problematic people who speak our language, live within the United States, were born here, but they're not necessarily Americans, if you know what I mean.
If these funds were received by immigrants who have an active sponsor, the government demands compensation specifically from the sponsor. And this applies both at the federal level and at the state level.
Okay, well, we got Rick Young. I think you have a simple-minded. Well, then, Rick, why are you here? I wouldn't follow someone simple. I wouldn't even listen. I would just go away. I wouldn't even bother commenting. You're wasting your time.
According to American analysts, this is part of a tougher policy, meaning increased oversight, reduced government spending, and pressure on legal immigration channels.
Again, reduced government spending. If you only looked at how much government spending is allocated towards liberal services, and we're finding out now we're being defrauded by these groups of immigrants that are coming into this country to the tune of hundreds of billions. We don't have that kind of money to just give away to terrorist groups in Somalia and people sending money back to other countries, but that's siphoning. It's not like they're taking money in the United States and they're recycling it in the United States. They're literally sending money back to their home countries. Why? Why are we doing that? When Americans can do that same work, I'd rather Americans do those jobs and Americans send that money to their own country, which is America. We keep our resources for us. America first, America only. We letting people just come over here and gouge us and literally siphon our resources and send them back. Like, well, what sense does that make? Why are we allowed to do that? There's no jobs here that illegals are doing that Americans can't and won't do. That's something in your imagination, because a lot of liberals like slavery. They believe in slave labor. And they're like, well, shit, if we send away the illegals, who's going to pick the cotton? I literally had a liberal say that to me a couple of weeks ago. Who's going to work in the fields and pick the fruit and pick the cotton if we get rid of the illegals? And I was like, that's the same argument the Confederacy made in the 1800s, which led to the Civil War. So you're literally using Confederate talking points to prove your point in 2025 on why illegals should remain as our low-wage slaves. That's a double-minded person. You can't have it both ways. You can't listen to those people.
American authorities, to put it bluntly, consider government assistance to be a last resort, not the norm as everyone has gotten used to. And now they have decided to actually enforce the obligations that previously existed only on paper and were hardly ever applied in practice. According to reports from American media, it is the Latin American communities that are most concerned because they are the ones who have started receiving these letters.
Well, then that means they were the ones most inclined to come here and planned on not working to begin with. See, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, these people are very hard workers. Okay, the men are. What are the women doing? Well, the women aren't even letting them, they're telling the government that they're single mothers with all these kids, and they're literally given benefits. Now, if you're voting Democrat, depending on the state you're in, you're getting cash benefits from Medicaid that they're laundering. They were laundering to you, and then you were getting a food subsidy in the form of an EBT card through SNAP, supplemental nutrition, and whatever the fuck it means. And so you basically, these people were being double dipped. They were literally being paid hand over fist, and their benefits were literally fivefold what Americans were getting because they strategically were trying to buy their votes. You want these newcomers that are here illegally to vote in favor of your party, so you have to pay them. And literally, when the EBT was shut down for that month, the illegals were showing up to these town hall meetings and saying, "Hey, look, you guys got about 2 more weeks of not sending me my money, and then we're going to think about going back to our country." Because a lot of these people were recruited in other countries. They didn't just come to the United States organically, fleeing war or whatever. There's NGOs that set up offices in other countries, and they recruit families, and they give them a paycheck to come just to live in the United States. And they tell you specifically where you have to live so that you can increase congressional seats for their politicians in those areas. And your only job is just to live there. You just need to be a warm body. And then when it's time to vote, you can vote illegally anywhere in the United States because there's no such thing as auditing. And even if the audit comes back that 99% of the votes were illegal, they're never going to remove the person that was elected and give it to the incumbent who actually won. That's not going to happen. We learned that back in 2020 with all the fraud and all the evidence. That weird vice president still went up there and certified on January 6th. And that's when Trump was like, look, let's go there and peacefully support our politicians and peacefully let our voices be heard. And they pretended they orchestrated a riot, which was bullshit. But they could have literally said, look, we were slated to use different electors due to we found this while we were investigating. And they could have at least went through the process, but they tried to pretend that there was nothing wrong. Meaning, but now, in hindsight being 2020, we've learned that of all the fraud in these states, Trump was right about Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. He was right. It turns out the ballots were there. They were duplicates. It was tons of fraud. Also, that these people can come here and illegally vote and illegally be counted in the census. Because remember, in the census, you just have to be a warm body in the country. You don't have to be an actual citizen to be counted. To be counted towards a congressional seat, like in California, you don't actually have to be a citizen. You just have to be there, illegal or not, which is a huge security oversight, in my opinion. Now that these benefits are being taken away from these people, they're not going to want to stay. America is cool, but it's not that fucking cool that you're going to risk. See, if you get deported, you can never come back. If you self-deport, they give you a couple of grand. So when you get home, you got a head start and you can kind of start working if you want to come back here. But when you come back, you're not going to be able to just live off our government. You're going to have to come back here and you're going to actually give us. We're not going to give you if you decide to come back. See, we haven't been a serious country. I can't believe it took this long to start enforcing that we're going to charge your sponsor when you take benefits that the sponsor said that they were going to make sure you didn't take because they were going to make sure you're fine. They were going to give you a job, but you end up living off the government. The sponsor is solely responsible for you because they literally co-signed for you to be here. So they're responsible.
Cubans and families who sponsored their relatives. Many sponsors had no idea that the responsibility could be so direct and have such a significant financial impact. Human rights advocates warn that this practice could sharply reduce the number of people willing to sponsor their relatives.
And that is the goddamn point. That is the point. We don't want you to sponsor anyone. We don't want to do it. Let them figure out how to get here on their own through the proper channels. If you sponsor them, you're responsible for them. And honestly, even if they commit crimes, you should be responsible for that as well. You're literally their custodial guardian for life while they're here until they become citizens. You have to make sure you are fully taking care of them. The option of living off the government and committing crimes and going to jail, and that also pulls down our system with costs. Those costs are going to be passed back to the sponsors now, which is amazing. But excuse me, who knew that wasn't already being enforced? I mean, there's a lot of laws that we're not enforcing. We're way too lenient here, way too lenient.
In other words, this will ultimately decrease the number of immigrants. The US is returning to strict enforcement of old immigration regulations. What used to be considered, so to speak, dormant rules are now being put into practice and will be applied very broadly in reality. If you are a sponsor or planning to become one, you need to clearly understand the possible financial consequences of sponsorship. And friends, this is no longer just theory. This is the reality at the end of 2025 that is happening in the US. Friends, what do you think about this topic?
So, the other day, somebody had got on here and they were like, Rico, you're from an immigrant family. You don't want to see more immigrants? Don't you want to see more immigrants? No, I didn't come to the United States to see a bunch of fucking immigrants. I didn't move to America to see a bunch of fucking Cubans. If I wanted to see a bunch of fucking Cubans, I'd move to Cuba. If I wanted to see a bunch of Mexicans, I'd move to Mexico. If I want to see a bunch of fucking Chinese, I'd move to China. I don't even think moving to China isn't even an option, but I would do it if that's what I wanted to see. I live in the United States because I want to see Americans. I want to live the way Americans live. I want our culture and our traditions to dominate my life. I'm not here looking for other things. Now, these other countries will take you in. If you want to see these people so bad, if you really love the illegals, then when they're getting deported, you should fly to their home country and be waiting for them at the airport with a fucking gift bag, some money, and help them get on their feet. Go help them make their home country great again if you're really concerned and you really love them. I seen that idiot fucking mayor speaking Somali the other day, and I was like, I bet you once all these goddamn Somalis are deported, I bet you his little fucking snowflake ass is not going to get on a plane and fly to Mogadishu and be waiting there at the airport speaking Somali to all of his friends from fucking Minnesota, Somalians. I bet you he won't do it because it's a grift. They're playing you. They're using you to win political power from their political enemies. That's all it is. That's it. You're just a pawn in a game. You're a throwaway. You're a toy. But going forward, we're now going to be holding the sponsors responsible for the people they sponsor. No more living off the government for free. We will now send the bill to the sponsor and we will garnish wages and take the money back that is owed. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Like and subscribe, share the video. I'll be back on with another topic in about 20 minutes. Remember, America first, America only.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.